Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here. My name's Brian, and for this episode, we are catching up with some Kino titles. There's been a lot of fun stuff coming out of Kino the last month or so, and I've fallen a little bit behind, so I want to just run through some really enjoyable titles. Not everything I've gotten a chance to watch, but definitely some stuff that I have watched in the past and that I enjoy. For the most part, these are going to be things I have seen. There are a couple here I've never seen that I'm excited about. But let's start with something I have seen. This is Juggernaut. This is from 1974. It is directed by the great Richard Lester, who is an American-born, British-based film director. Most notable for, I think people remember him for Hard Day's Night. That's one of the big ones. But he is an American filmmaker, although like Hard Day's Night, things like, How I Won the War, he did Help, The Knack and How to Get It. This is all very British stuff. He did the Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers films in the 70s. I want to say this film is kind of like right in between those or during those. And he did a great film called Petulia with George C. Scott and Julie Christie that I hope gets a Blu-ray at some point. Really great. Seems like a straight up the Warner Archive alley. A title I think they control, but I mean, maybe Criterion will put it out. Anyway, getting a little too far afield from Juggernaut, which is the closest thing to a disaster movie he ever did. It's kind of like a disaster thriller, sort of, and it is all about this ship called the Britannic, and basically what turns into a terrorist situation where a terrorist demands a huge ransom in exchange for information on how to disarm the 7 bombs he's planted aboard this transatlantic cruise ship. The cast is quite wonderful, including Richard Harris headlining, with Omar Sharif, David Hemmings, Anthony Hopkins, Shirley Knight, Ian Holm, Clifton James, Roy Kinnear, and a bunch more folks that you'd recognize. There's a lot more British character actors in here, but it's a really solid, it's the kind of movie where you watch it and you go, the filmmakers behind Speed saw this movie. It just feels like that kind of a thriller, but like it's a proto-disaster movie trying to figure out how to not blow the ship up and sink it. It's sort of a preemptive disaster, if you will. But it's really solid, and it has come out before on Blu-ray from Kino. This is a new slipcase edition, which now includes a commentary from film historians Steve Mitchell and Nathaniel Thompson. Always a wonderful duo, and I listened to some of that track, and I was enjoying it. I don't see anything about a new transfer here, so I'm not sure that a new one has been done, but it looks pretty good. But like I said, really solid, just very enjoyable. I think Elric talked about this one on Pure Cinema a while back now. I can't remember what the occasion was, but he enjoyed it. I think he had been watching it for the first time. I had seen it some years ago on VHS, but this is a nice widescreen 1.85:1 transfer, and yeah, just a really solid, underseen, like I said, proto-disaster movie with a really great cast. Highly, highly recommended. Next up, speaking of my podcast partner, Elric, we have one that he recommended to me, one that I, again, was also aware of. This is a Western with Charlton Heston called Will Penny from 1967. It is directed by Tom Grise, father of John Grise. John Grise, you'll know as Laszlo Hollifeld from Real Genius. Everything sort of stems from that. I mean, he's in he's the werewolf in Monster Squad. He's all over. He's done tons and tons of movies, and I'm a big fan of him. He's in Joysticks. But anyway, this is his dad, and his dad, Tom Grise, was a director who made a lot of films with Charles Bronson. I mean, not a lot, but a few. He made Breakheart Pass and Breakout, and he did a decent amount with Heston. He did this one and one I love called Number One, which is Heston as an aging quarterback. That came out on Blu-ray from, I think, Scorpion a few years back. I'm a big fan of that one. 100 Rifles with Jim Brown and Raquel Welch and Burt Reynolds. He's done some fun action movies and sci-fi, and there's one here called Call to Danger with Peter Graves and Diana Muldaur, and now I'm going to add that one to my watch list. I don't know that film. Anyway, he's a very fascinating director, and this is a movie that I've been meaning to see for years. Elric really liked it. He is Charlton Heston is the title character, Will Penny. He plays an aging cowboy who takes a job on a ranch which sort of requires him to ride the line of the property looking for trespassers or worse, squatters. And he ends up finding that his cabin in the high mountains has been taken over by a woman whose guide to Oregon deserted her and her son. So they got stuck. And he's sort of too ashamed to kick her out just as the bitter winter of the mountains is about to set in. So he agrees to sort of share the cabin until the spring thaw. But it isn't just the snow that slowly thaws, as you would imagine. Lonely man and woman soon forget their mutual hostility and start developing a deep love for one another. But there's other conflicts in this, and this is another one with a really great cast. I'm not going to go into any other conflict. That's, it's a little more complex than that synopsis would lead you to believe, but at least that's my understanding. I still need to watch it. I just remember what Elric had said about it. But the cast is great. Charlton Heston, Joan Hackett is the woman, Donald Pleasance is here, Lee Majors, Bruce Dern, Ben Johnson, Slim Pickens, Clifton James again, Anthony Zerbe, Roy Jensen, G.D. Spradlin, William Shallert, Matt Clark, Lucas Skew. It's a really, really great cast. This is almost like a Peck and Paw movie cast with some more extras in here, Lee Majors and Donald Pleasance and stuff. But yeah, really, really, really excited to watch this, hopefully in the next month or so. This is a brand new HD master from a 4K scan of the 35mm original camera negative. And yeah, the back of this box goes into a little more detail about some of the problems. There's some outlaws and things. Again, I won't go into that, but needless to say, that extra cast really helps this movie, it sounds like. So audio commentary by author, screenwriter C. Courtney Joyner and film historian Henry Park, and Will Penny's script supervisor Michael Priest. So that's cool. You've got somebody involved in the production. Remembering Will Penny featurette with Charlton Heston and John Grise, and The Cowboys of Will Penny featurette with Charlton Heston and John Grise. Now I'm assuming that must come from the Paramount DVD. I want to say this is a Paramount. Yeah, this is a Paramount movie. Because obviously I don't think either of them are with us anymore, and so it must be ported over, but definitely want to watch the movie and then check out those features, and nice that this has got a new scan. Very excited about this one. This is high on my list. That's Will Penny. Then we have this one, which I haven't seen in quite a while, but used to be like something of a favorite of mine back in my video store days. Whoops. This is the Great Train Robbery, also known as the first Great Train Robbery, because of course there is the 1903 Edwin S. Porter film, which is, very famous cinematic, not curio, but like sort of an important early film with the cowboy shooting at the camera and stuff like that. So anyway, this I think gets lost in the shuffle because of that film, but this is a very different movie. This is directed by Michael Crichton, who, of course, author of Jurassic Park, among many others. And he didn't direct a lot of movies, but he directed, before this, he had done Westworld and Coma, and this comes out in 1978. And then he would do Looker and Runaway and Physical Evidence, and that would end his career directing. But this one, I'm curious what the back says here. All aboard for runaway action and suspense in this riveting masterpiece from legendary director, writer Michael Crichton. Sean Connery, Donald Sutherland, and Leslie Ann Down star in this spine-tingling and suavely performed adventure based on history's first train robbery. stunningly shot by the great cinematographer Jeffrey Unsworth, 2001: A Space Odyssey and Murder on the Orient Express. This ingenious crime caper delivers a mile-a-minute thrills and breathtaking excitement. Connery is Edward Pierce, a master thief who conceives of a brilliant plan to steal a fortune in gold bars from a railroad payroll car. But to pull off the most daring heist in history, Pierce must join forces with a safecracker, Sutherland, and his beautiful girlfriend, Down, in a series of intricately plotted thefts that will test all of their nerve, camaraderie, and larcenous skill. And this has a commentary from director Michael Crichton. Now, I can't remember. I feel like this has been available on Blu-ray before, but I could be wrong about that. But nice that they included the commentary. That's obviously from a DVD. But this one just really has always been one that I've enjoyed as a heist film, but also as like a sort of a, earlier non-modern heist film. But with Connery and Sutherland are both very good, as is Leslie Ann Down. And there's it's well-directed suspense, and there are just things they have to pull off. It's like multiple heists in some ways, and then a big heist. And there's a lot of planning and a lot of like, let's figure out if we can do this kind of stuff. And so I'm really excited to check this out again. It just was a blast for me. In fact, I want to say that at the time I discovered it back in the 90s on VHS, I think I tossed it into my, staff pick section for a while because I was so infatuated with this movie. So anyway, it's a solid one, and glad to see it get a nice slipcover release from Kino. Like I said, with that commentary, which I'm definitely excited to hear, because I think I've owned the DVD, but I don't remember if I listened to the commentary, because this is one that I've owned way back on VHS after I saw it, and so that's a great train robbery. Next up, we have The White Buffalo. It's another one that I associate with Elric Kane, but one that I have seen. Directed by J. Lee Thompson, Tarantino favorite J. Lee Thompson, who talk about a guy who would go on to do a lot of work with Charles Bronson. But of course he did, the original Cape Fear, Guns of Navarone, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, probably the best Planet of the Apes movie. But like tons of stuff with Bronson, like 10 to Midnight, Death Wish 4, Kinji-Tae, Murphy's Law, Evil That Men Do. Oh, I forgot that he did Reincarnation of Peter Proud. Very enjoyable movie. I like that one a lot. Happy Birthday to Me. He's got a very interesting and varied career. This is from 1977. So this is coming out the same year as Star Wars, which I always think is fascinating. What are the movies that came out the same year as Star Wars? What are the movies that people opted to not see and instead saw Star Wars for another time? I'm not saying that happened here, but this cast is pretty great. Charles Bronson, Jack Warden, Will Sampson, Kim Novak, Clint Walker, Stuart Whitman, Slim Pickens, John Carradine, Ed Lauder, Martin Cove, Scott Walker. It's really a nice cast, and it's a sort of a strange Western version of Moby Dick, basically, where Wild Bill Hickok, played by Bronson, hunts a white buffalo he has seen in a dream, and he moves through a variety of uniquely authentic Western locations, dim, filthy, makeshift taverns, freezing slaughterhouses like frontier towns, and beautifully desolate high country, before teaming up with a young crazy horse to pursue the creature that's played by Will Sampson. But yeah, this is another one I haven't seen in a minute, and this is its second release on Blu-ray. This is a brand new master. Kino had put this out before in a non-slipcover edition. Now it's available in a slipcover edition. This is a new 2K scan of the 35 interpositive. So very cool to see this Bronson movie come available. Kind of an animal attack movie a little bit, so it's really in my wheelhouse in that way. This has an audio commentary by film historian Paul Talbot, author of Bronson's Loose, one of the great, truly the great expert on Charles Bronson and his career, and his commentaries are always well researched and go into a lot of detail about locations, actors, Bronson himself, where he was at when he's making these movies. Paul Talbot is a very enjoyable commentator, so I'm very excited to check out this commentary from him and this new scan of White Buffalo, J. Lee Thompson's movie with Bronson from 77. So next up, this is actually an older one. I'm just going to throw it in the mix here because it's a one that I don't think I ever talked about on the channel, and I just watched it recently, and I thought it was pretty good. It's called The Counterfeit Trader. It's from 1962. It's directed by George Seaton. It stars William Holden, Lily Palmer. That's the majority of the cast you'll recognize, although there's a really important and interesting late in the movie role for Klaus Kinski that I dug. But basically, he plays a Swedish oil trader. He's like an American expat living in Sweden who gets blacklisted in modern day World War II. And he is then sort of enlisted by the British Allies to infiltrate the Germans, basically get them to try and trade oil with him and get as much information as he can from them. But it's really tense because he basically has to not tell anybody what he's doing, even his wife, which causes problems with his marriage, and sort of woo these Germans that he doesn't like, and ends up putting off a lot of his friends in the process. He meets another woman who is involved with the Allies, and they sort of form a relationship. But there's a lot of great tense moments of him, in Berlin or wherever, where you think he's going to get found out, and there's even a moment where it looks like his number's up. Like one of his German contacts has found out some information about him, and he's able to turn the tables, or maybe not. We'll see. But it's got a lot of great tension to it, and there's a great sort of running escape. It's not like an action chase, but it's like him moving from safe house to safe house in this sort of underground, almost getting caught multiple times, and that tension really carries well throughout the movie. So I dug this one. I'd heard about it, but I'd never seen it. A nice later William Holden role. And this has an audio commentary from film historian and writer Julie Kyrgo of Twilight Time. A huge fan of hers. Definitely want to hear her thoughts on this. But Lily Palmer I wasn't as aware of. She is one of the co-stars here, and very good in the film. And I may have seen her in some other movies, but I don't remember. But I'd like to check out some more of her stuff. But this is a little bit like a mini discovery. Counterfeit Trader. So I thought I'd just throw that in the mix. Next up, we have The Package. This is from 1989, and this is directed by Andrew Davis, who did The Fugitive, among other things. And really good cast here. Gene Hackman, Joanna Cassidy, Tommy Lee Jones, John Hurd, Dennis Franz, Pam Grier, and Rennie Santoni. So it's a really solid group of actors here, even more that I don't fully recognize the names of, but I know that I'd recognize some of these people. But what does the back for this say? The great Andrew Davis, director of The Fugitive, Under Siege, and Code of Silence, comes a brilliant, explosively entertaining action thriller featuring powerful performances by screen legends Gene Hackman, Tommy Lee Jones, featuring a superb supporting cast that includes Joanna Cassidy, Dennis Franz, Pam Grier, and John Hurd. The Package delivers top-notch excitement. Sergeant Johnny Gallagher, that's Hackman, thinks he's been given a routine assignment to escort a rebellious American soldier, Tommy Lee Jones, from Europe to the U.S. for a military court-martial. Gallagher soon learns, however, that the assignment is anything but routine when he uncovers a terrifying military conspiracy. The clock is ticking down to a historic superpower summit, and Gallagher must stop the deadly plot before it's too late for him and his country. So, feels kind of Cold War-y. But I do like Andrew Davis, very solid action director and thriller director. So I can't remember if I've seen this one or not. But this does not list if it's a new scan. I know this has come out before, not in a slipcase edition, but now it has a slipcase and an audio commentary by director Andrew Davis and actress Joanna Cassidy, as well as an interview with actress Joanna Cassidy, plus an optional introduction by director Andrew Davis. Very handsome slipcase on this one. And I'm always into Gene Hackman, just about anything he ever did. He was never not good, in my opinion. He just always delivered an interesting performance. So this one sounds like fun. Definitely curious about that one. Then we have Gorky Park. This is from 1983. This one is directed by Michael Apted, who is a fascinating filmmaker in that he started with documentaries, the Up series, where he followed a group of British children, from age, I think 7 on through to, I think he just did 61 up. So he would do every 4 or 5 years, he would follow up with this group of kids. And it's a fascinating series, but I love that he became more of a commercial director. I find that fascinating. It doesn't happen that much. But he did things like Coal Miner's Daughter, and I'm trying to think of the stuff that people would know a little bit more. Blink. I don't know if anybody remembers that thriller with Madeline Stowe. Thunderheart. Gorillas in the Mist. I really like Firstborn. That's a really fun one that he did with Peter Weller and Terry Garr and Christopher Collett, kind of a dysfunctional family turned thriller movie. But he actually did that right after Gorky Park. Now, Gorky Park is about a police officer in Moscow, played by William Hurt. And this cast is really great, too, by the way. William Hurt, Lee Marvin, Brian Dennehy, Ian Bannon. I know there's some other folks in here that I know. Anyway, the police inspector tries to solve the case of 3 bodies found in Moscow's Gorky Park, but finds his attempts to solve the crime impeded by his superiors. Working on his own, Renko seeks out more information and stumbles across a conspiracy involving the highest levels of government. This one I remember being, this is an R-rated film. I remember it was the early days of like cable or something, and I feel like my parents wanted to watch it on HBO or something, but it was something they were excited to see. Maybe we rented it. I don't remember, but it was one of those that was an adult, thriller, and that, they don't really make this kind of movie as much anymore, but it was a little more, I remember I saw some of it or something. Maybe I watched it at the time and didn't really get it, but it was more violent, I think, in terms of the bodies that are found to start with, and just the threat of violence, and it just felt more intense than a lot of movies I had seen at the age I was when it came out, or when it was on cable or VHS. And so there's something about this movie that kind of sticks with me. And I think it was one of the first times I'd seen Lee Marvin, maybe. I don't know if I'd even seen Dirty Dozen yet, or maybe I'd seen Dirty Dozen and now this. Early for William Hurt, who I had also seen or not seen in Body Heat, which was another movie I remember my parents watching with my aunt and uncle on Laserdisc, and I wasn't allowed to be in the room at the time. So these were actors that I was familiar with. But anyway, I haven't seen this one in years, so I can barely remember it. It has an interview with Michael Apted, and I just want to check it out again. It's been a long time. That cover is just very memorable. Then we have another 3D movie. This is always fun, from the good folks at 3D Film Archive. They do really great work, really take time and care in transferring these films and making sure they're getting, the best prints they can, and getting the stereoscopic as lined up as possible. I think it's one of my problems is occasionally you come across 3D Blu-rays that are not done with the highest quality, and they just give you a headache, really. But this is a neat one because it's from 1972. It's a girls in prison movie. It's called Prison Girls. It is directed by Tom DeSimone, who did Reform School Girls, another cult item. Chatterbox. He did Hell Night. I think that's a big slasher with Linda Blair that a lot of people remember, and I think he worked in adult films prior to that. But definitely a cult. Concrete Jungle. He kind of almost specialized in women in prison kind of movies. But this is one I wasn't really even aware of, and it's about 6 female prisoners that are given a weekend furlough to prepare them for their upcoming parole, and while they're out, they all have sort of miscellaneous sexual experiences, some good, some bad. One returns to her pimp, even though he is violent with her. One overcomes her frigidity. One gets attacked and assaulted. 2 join in a threesome, and 1 goes back to her criminal lover shortly before the police show up. So it's a very sexy movie and a little bit less prison. It's more outside prison with some prison stuff too. But a cast I'm not familiar with. Interesting to see this sort of movie in 3D. So it's a little bit of a curio in that sense. But like I said, I'm always just kind of fascinated by the Blu-ray 3D that 3D Film Archive does, and they've newly restored and remastered this film, so it looks good in 3D. Yeah, some of these actors are in things like Super Vixens and Flesh Gordon, Werewolf Woman. Yeah, fascinating one for the 3D collection, Prison Girls. And then we've got some arty stuff here. We've got a couple from Peter Greenaway. I think we've talked about him a little bit on the channel before. We have the Draftsmen's Contract. This is from 1982. I think this might be my favorite Greenaway, and it's been a while since I've seen it, but very excited that this is a newly remastered in 4K by the BFI National Archive transfer. And it says the Draftsman's Contract is Peter Greenaway's masterpiece set in a richly exaggerated 17th century England. This witty, stylized, erotic country house murder mystery catapulted Greenaway to the forefront of international art cinema, adorned with intricate wordplay, extravagant costumes, opulent photography. Greenaway's first narrative feature weaves a labyrinthine mystery around the maxim, draw what you see, not what you know. An aristocratic wife commissions a young cocksure draftsman, Anthony Higgins, to sketch her husband's property while he is away in exchange for a fee, room and board, and one sexual favor for each of the 12 drawings. As the draftsman becomes more entrenched in the devious schemings in this idyllic country home, curious details emerge in his drawings that may reveal a murder. So a little bit of a tiny bit of like a Blowout influence maybe, but just a fascinating, and I think one of his more accessible movies. Like, it is still pretty arty in its approach, but I think very accessible. And like I said, it's just a very interesting in terms of the way the story goes and little details that are slowly revealed. So very excited to check this one out again. This has Peter Greenaway commentary and introduction, 10 minutes, 4 deleted scenes, 10 minutes, behind-the-scenes footage and on-set interviews, 10 minutes, interview with composer Michael Nyman, 7 minutes, and Greenaway short films. This is very exciting. Intervals, 1969, 6 minutes, Windows, 1974, 4 minutes, Dear Phone, 1976, 17 minutes, and Water Rackets, 1978, 11 minutes. Very cool stuff. So this is Kino Lorber and Zeitgeist Films and the BFI collaborating for the Draftsmen Contract, and then along with that we get a Zed Two Knots and The Falls. So this is a 2-disc set, and this is 2 films. So a Zed Two Knots is one that I've also seen. I remember that one being much more arty and maybe a little harder to get into, but definitely defining of kind of the films that Greenaway makes, if you will. Zed Two Knots, 1985, is Peter Greenaway's beautifully disturbing and darkly humorous take on erotic obsession and death in a horrific automobile swan accident in front of the Rotterdam Zoo. 2 women die and a third, Alba, loses her leg. The 2 widowers, twin zoologists Oliver and Oswald, Eric and Brian Deacon, in roles originally offered to the Quay brothers, fixate on their wives' bodies and slowly become obsessed with evolution and decomposition, even going as far as to meticulously craft exquisitely morbid time-lapse films of decaying creatures. The plot thickens when a mad surgeon schemes to use Alba as a subject in his experiments with animal symmetry and Vermeer homage. Full of surprises and magnificent conundrums, Zed Two Knots is perversely comic and teasing treat for the mind and senses. The closest thing I could say is it's sort of somewhere not between Cronenberg and Lynch, but it's got a little of that energy, and then, like, again, veering even more art house than either of those filmmakers do, I think. So I remember it being odd and interesting. I saw it when I was very young, when I was in college, and it didn't appeal to me at that time, but I really do think a rewatch would, I'd be much more open to it now, for sure. The Falls from 1980. This is an earlier film, arguably the most significant film of Peter Greenaway's prolific career. Shot as a pseudo-documentary, this magnum opus dazzlingly details 92 case histories of people who have been affected by the VIEW, violent unknown event, a mysterious apocalyptic phenomenon related to birds flying and bizarre invented languages. Very interesting. Don't know anything about that one. So disc 1, Greenaway commentary and video introduction, 6 minutes. That's on a Zed Two Knots, I believe. 6 decay sequences, Greenaway shorts, H is for House, 1976, 9 minutes, and Walk Through H, 1978, 41 minutes. So we're getting more shorts. This is really neat, these two together. You get a ton of Greenaway shorts. Vertical Features Remake, this is on disc 2, 1978, 44 minutes. And Video Pieces on the Falls and Vertical Features Remake, created by Greenaway. So very nice 2-disc set along with the Draftsman's Contract. So really good stuff. And yeah, just more Greenaway on Blu-ray is delightful. He deserves to be revisited. And lastly, more in that art house vein, we have a Guy Madden film. This is Tales of the Gimli Hospital Redux, set during the smallpox epidemic in the village of Gimli, Manitoba, near the turn of the century. Tales from the Gimli Hospital, 1988, is a dreamlike elliptical film which explores the jealousy and madness instilled in two men who share a hospital room in a Gimli we no longer know. Zeitgeist Films and the films we like in Canada present a brand new 4K remastering of Tales of Gimli Hospital Redux by Guy Madden, which had its world premiere at the 2022 Toronto International Film Festival. The new 4K scan digital remaster was supervised by Guy Madden using original printing elements by the TIFF Cinematheque Library. It includes replacement of a long-lost scene. Madden's highly acclaimed first feature, released in 1988, is now regarded as one of the true cult hits of the midnight movie cult circuit. This includes a new audio commentary by director Madden, re-released trailer, and The Heart of the World, a 2000 short film by Guy Madden, courtesy of TIFF Film Reference Library. So, haven't seen this in forever. You could put him sort of like in a Lynch category also, but he is sort of his own thing. So another one that I'm very much looking forward to checking out, especially with that restored lost scene. But that will do it for this rundown of Kino Catchup. I have more stuff coming from Kino. Hopefully in the next week or two. I have To Live and Have Not, To Live and Die in LA, 4K, and some cop movies and some crime movies. Lots of fun stuff. I'm going to try and dig into those and watch those before I speak to you about them. But just wanted to talk about some Kino stuff before I got to that. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.